Good day, everyone. I'm Ishwaran, Director at Jobs of the Future and Head of Product Incubation Practice at JFF Labs. Welcome to the second session in the series, What Employers Are Seeking, Qualifications for Green Jobs. Firstly, I want to express my gratitude to our sponsor, Indeed, for this partnership with JFF in sponsoring the Green Jobs, Green Skills, and Green Opportunities Amplification campaign. And this three-part webinar series dives into the realm of green jobs and opportunities and explores the role of employers and discusses how we can scale these solutions. So before we dive in, a little bit about Jobs of the Future. We are a nonprofit organization dedicated to fostering positive change in the American workforce and education sectors. And our mission is to promote equitable economic advancement for all with a goal of 75 million people facing systemic barriers and securing quality jobs within the next decade. So, how is our climate innovations practice contributing to achieving this North Star of ours? So, we believe that training and skills associated with the climate movement can accelerate progress towards equitable economic advancement. But this can only happen when all voices are included in shaping the solutions to these challenges and opportunities. We have a great panel lined up today for you all to discuss this topic, and I'd like to invite all the panelists on stage. Awesome. All right. So first we have Elliot Metzger, Director of Sustainable Business and Innovation at the World Resources Institute. WRI is a research organization working to meet people's essential needs, protect and restore nature, and build resilient communities. And Elliot's research focuses on emerging or overlooked global challenges where private sector action and investment is needed. Next, we have Molly Hemstreet, who is the co-founder and co-executive director for the Industrial Commons. The Industrial Commons, or TIC, founds and scales employee-owned social enterprises and industrial cooperatives and supports frontline workers to build a new Southern working class that erases the inequities of generational poverty and builds an economy and future for all. And finally, we have Anshuman Bapna, who is the founder of Terra.do, the global platform for learning and working in the climate economy. Terra combines immersive cohort-based learning programs with a community of climate insiders and jobs from the top climate employers across the world. Their ambitious goal is to move 100 million people, 100 million people into climate work this decade. Welcome everyone to this session, and I want to kick us off with a good 5-minute conversation with you, Elliot. All right. So, Elliot, I do remember like you and your colleagues, and of course my colleagues from JF have traveled to India earlier this year, and you went to where? Mumbai and Thane, is that correct?
Mumbai, yeah, and then just outside of Mumbai, yeah.
Mumbai. Okay, perfect. So, and we know that WRI is deeply committed to helping individuals and small businesses navigate the transition to climate resilient jobs. So I want to hear, I'm sure the audience want to hear about your visit to Mumbai and what key takeaways you had from there. And how do you think small business owners view climate impact and job creation? And notably, are you seeing challenges they're grappling with that you wish to highlight? And I also want to throw another question in there, which is around green jobs. So when we say green jobs, what's your take on how that fits into the world of small and medium enterprises?
Yes, a lot to unpack there, Ishwar. But first, just let me say thanks for including us in this, and thanks for being a partner of WRI's in this work. We've learned a lot from JFF, and excited for this conversation. Learned a lot in the visit to India with Aries Charitable Foundation and our other partners in the Crest Initiative. It was really eye-opening. It was my first time to India, but every time I go, I learn something new. And our WRI India colleagues set up a number of site visits with local micro, small, and medium enterprises. Also talked to some government leaders about how they were working with MSMEs. Anyway, there's a lot there, but the one thing I brought back with me was just an appreciation for how backwards some of our theories of change are when it comes to supply chains and people working in supply chains. I think me personally, for years, I've sort of adhered to the theory that you could have these big Fortune 500 companies set targets and goals and push them down their supply chain, but that only goes so far. You talk to a tier one supplier, maybe they're sort of taking the actions to help their big buyers meet their sustainability targets or greenhouse gas emission targets. But once you get to tier two, three, four, five, I mean, we're talking like really deep into supply chains. That that theory of change falls apart, and you're talking about very different interests. For the small enterprises, they're thinking about meeting payroll, retaining good workers, access to new markets. That doesn't always overlap with the sustainability targets that are getting pushed down. And an auditor comes in to check how much energy is being used or what kind of safety standards, but those check the box exercises, they don't always have the same sort of motivations or impact. So I saw a real disconnect between the big companies and the small companies when it comes to climate change. But I also saw a lot of learning to be had. And those big companies that are thinking about their supply chains in really interesting, innovative ways, they're going into those small and medium enterprises with an open mind. They're looking to learn, understand what they need, like I said, to meet payroll, to retain good workers. So I think that the thing we're going to push in our research going forward is a lot about that learning and a lot about the partnering rather than the pushing and pulling. So anyway, that's sort of what I brought back from the trip. Can I ask you a question? Can I
Oh
ask you
yeah,
some reflections?
yeah, absolutely. Why not? Yeah.
So, I mean, with WRI and JFF collaborating on climate, and the insights and recommendations from the Morning Consult survey and the regional solutions for a growing quality green jobs guide, it highlights all the important links between job creation and climate action. Um, your role is head of product incubation. How do you perceive the intersections between your work and the climate crisis? What kind of contributions do you see your work bringing to JFF's objectives, but also like the broader market? Diverse pathways to solutions for climate change. Any reflections on that?
That's a great question, and I want to double click on what you said in your answer, Brown. Our theory of change are backward, so we'll have to noodle on that. But it's an interesting way of summarizing. If it's a tagline or a t-shirt slogan, I think that's a great one. So there is, of course, this collaboration between WRI and JFF on climate and insights, and the reports from Quest and the Morning Consult survey that came out kind of does link job creation with climate action, right? So, and it kind of very clear that we obviously need very innovative solutions to kind of meet these climate crises and challenges. So, as head of product incubation, I do see a crucial intersection between our work and addressing these challenges and crises. And Elliot, so I'm going to throw some numbers out here. I'm sure you've heard this a million times before. So these numbers say um, ILO has said, 24 million jobs green jobs by 2030. And then there was another one which said there's a net 18 million green jobs from the Paris Climate Accords. And then there's another few which says over 300 million green collar gigs in the coming decade. And there's another one which says 400 worker days are lost annually due to climate change. So and we know that millions more such jobs will be transformed as companies and governments embrace this transition. And this green wave stands to radically transform the modern labor market with the potential to either reduce or exacerbate equity gaps for workers. And green jobs need to be more accessible to low income communities and people of color who are vastly underrepresented in the green economy. And we're calling on leaders and stakeholders representing workforce systems, education, policymaking, community development, and more to prioritize economic activity that is interconnected with long-term environmental and social impacts. And this will require removing the limitations around how we define and categorize green jobs. So this allows us to nurture disruptive technology-driven ideas into scalable solutions that address climate challenges head-on that we just mentioned, and I'm happy to talk about it more down the line. And through these initiatives, Elliot, we aim to contribute unique solutions to the broader market's efforts in exploring different and diverse pathways to address climate change and drive positive impact and to foster innovation. So, I mean, a lot to consume here, and I kind of want to, at this point, broaden our conversation here and bring in the rest of the panelists on stage. Hey, folks, and I know you folks were listening in on this conversation, so I kind of want to bring you folks in and kind of get your reactions to the topic that we're talking about and whatever we heard. And I want to kick us off with you, Molly. So I know we've had conversations. I remember going back earlier this year, late last year, and we talked about how the Industrial Commons focuses on North Carolina and the neighboring regions, and how you are boosting employee-owned social enterprises and industrial cooperatives. Oh, and by the way, I should mention this: this TIC was selected as a regional hub for the National Science Foundation's regional award. Yes, congratulations again, and it's really a big deal. And switching a bit here, so recently JFF released and JFF and WRI together as part of press released the regional climate readiness tool, and and I kind of went in the tool and I kind of put in Burke County where TIC is headquartered in, and I saw there that it said, climate readiness is critical. Readiness assessment is critical for Burke County, and which means kind of translates to high risk, high readiness, which then translates to which means severe risk in terms of weather and social vulnerability, but is relatively well prepared to take action, which is the good news piece of it. So now what I have for you is, so given this assessment, of course, and the award that you got, how do you balance the struggle between getting younger talent into fields like textile and furniture manufacturing? And how do you reason that making jobs more climate friendly could be a game changer in drawing younger talent? And also, could you kind of touch upon this reshaping of legacy industries like textiles to offer sustainable jobs for the local workforce?
Sure, I'm happy to talk about that and build on a lot of what Elliot was just saying. And again, to just also, we're really excited to be part of this community with JFF and the Green Quotient as well. So we're very excited about that. And Elliot was talking a lot about supply chains, and one word that really stood out to me when he was talking was this idea of mutuality, of workers and businesses actually working together, because we are working in a traditional heritage industry. So much when we hear about jobs, it's this new green economy, but we actually have like the infrastructure of a heritage economy that I think we have to be sure, as we're thinking about new jobs, that we're also thinking about the greening of traditional jobs, because it can allow us to accelerate more quickly because the infrastructure is there. What we have to do is be able to creatively understand, how do we disrupt some of that? How do we change some of that? And how do we add new products or processes to the market that are greener, but that can actually use this infrastructural base that we already have? And I do think, again, we were really honored to be part of one of these NSF engines, because I think what they recognized in us was this other word we've been using, which is an ecosystem, because so much of what we need to be able to be done is a hyper localized approach to transformation that can transform a region, but then also be replicated in other areas. And so, we're lucky in that we still have one of the largest concentrations of textile workers in the US. And it's a struggle because a lot of that work continues. Like as I was growing up here, we lost a lot of that work. We had one of the highest job losses in the country. And that work still continues to trickle out, because in this conversation, it's not just about creating new jobs. We also need to do a lot of work around educating consumers so that the products they buy and the resources they buy are also reflected in the ability to create these green jobs and hold them here in a localized place, particularly in places that are often underdeveloped, like the rural South and Appalachia. So that's some of the challenges that we're looking at. But before I was on this conversation, I was just at a really fascinating plant, and I ran over so I could be sure I got on time to this. But it was so interesting because going back to this idea that Elliot was talking about of mutuality, is the companies that will be able to stay here are the ones that are looking forward into new markets. And those new markets are often driven by sustainability. So I think we are starting to get to consumers, or consumers are at least asking around, I want a product that I know has a climate positive solution attached to it. So what we're really seeing is this interesting partnership between companies that are looking for young workers and really trying to create and evolve in new sustainable markets, and younger workers coming in saying, I want purpose in my job. And we feel like that is actually a really interesting combination to be able to retain workers by having purpose, but then also having strong markets so that those are high quality jobs that we're creating. A lot of the work in textiles needs to be pushed. We need to raise the floor on a lot of these jobs. So I want to really kind of lift back up this idea of mutuality, of companies appreciating workers, and really also helping them, give them purpose by taking these heritage industries and driving forward new sustainable practices, both within the plants and in product production as well. I think, again, I just want to emphasize, like, green jobs. We need to be able to move quickly. And I think that's why it is so important we re-identify these areas where infrastructure is already strong, and we can identify the gaps of where we can move forward with infrastructure. And then one other thing Elliot said that I want to pick up on is this idea of networks. And you naturally have that within a place like ours, where you have an ecosystem or you have a supply chain. We often like to rename supply chains as value chains, because ultimately what we need to do is rebrand our supply chains as people that are sharing values. We talk a lot in our region about co-opetition. Where are we filling out problems together? Where might we be, moving more through competition? But a lot of what we need to be able to do is create best practice in these regional areas, in industries, and through infrastructure and through supply chains to solve some of these problems. And one of those is certainly bringing in new talented workers. Any other questions on that one? Because I have a question for Anshuman. Would that be good? So 1 million jobs, I'm working on holding on some of our jobs in our ecosystem. A lot of what our jobs are about are like retaining jobs, and retaining the jobs here in a new kind of innovative way. But I'm so intrigued by your ability to think about transforming this number of jobs and putting over 100 million people into climate opportunities, particularly as you think about this gap between identifying skills and providing transfer of skill transferability. So one of my questions is, similar to regional organizations like the Industrial Commons, we're grappling with this challenge of attracting and retaining local talent, but we're also trying to showcase this opportunity in green jobs in our industry and our sector. So how do you envision Terra's approach in helping us address these issues like we're also addressing in our ecosystem? And specifically, what types of tools or strategies do you have in mind for helping to bridge some of the gaps that you're trying to address?
Thank you, Molly, for that question. So first of all, just a big fan of what you're doing at the Industrial Commons. I think the incredible ambition of that approach, and the fact that the word that you use, and I think you picked it up from what Elliot was also talking about, which is mutuality and ecosystems and networks. That is so much exemplified in what you do. So big fan of that. And frankly, that is the starting point for how Terra plays potentially a role in this as well. So maybe if I back out a little bit, my own story, personal story, was as one of the many individuals some years back looking at my skills and trying to figure out how I could use my skills in climate and sustainability focused work and not finding an answer. And over a period of time, as we've worked through this problem in the past couple of years, the big insight has been that the reason why there's a market failure in the first place is because you need this ecosystem-centric approach from day one. You can't build just one piece of it and hope that the rest shall follow. And as you can imagine, for organizations that are just getting off the ground, that's not the easiest problem to solve on day one. And I think that is what we ended up bringing to the table, and what I think might be interesting in a regional context as well. So I tend to break down the problem in essentially 3 steps. And imagine now kind of that applied to both the textile employers and also potential new talent coming in, which is these 3 different segments are. One is that there is a discovery challenge. Now, the discovery challenge is what kind of roles exist out there in the first place that somebody going to a community college in North Carolina would potentially be interested in. And that's very hard to discover right now. But second also is that on the employer side, employers who are actually bringing those kind of sustainability thinking into their processes and their products find it very hard to get discovered by talent on the other side. So therefore, there is this discovery market failure that somebody needs to address. Second is, now that you've discovered as an individual what those kind of roles might be, there's some place where you need to find out what kind of skills to acquire to be able to get there. And these skills are not individual atomic skills. They're often pathways, right? You start somewhere and you have an end destination in mind, and you have to have something that looks like a credible step-by-step guide to go from here to there. And that's, again, something which is right now very scattered, not in one single place. And the third one is that if you solve for these two, you want individuals to be landing in jobs which have this high green quotient, as to speak Ishwar's language. But they have to not just land in those jobs, they have to come back as mentors, back into the ecosystem, going back to the discovery path all over again. And even though our ambition is to try to get 100 million people working in climate this decade, the journey of 100 million people starts with a few people to begin with. And we've always found that being able to concentrate that, root that in either a functional skill or a geography is actually the right way to get that whole ecosystem started in a mini small fashion. And so specifically the tools and strategies that, Molly, that you were talking about. So for example, in our case, we ended up building on the discovery side a lot of analysis on what kind of jobs exist out there and what kind of skills are embedded in them, which are potentially green in nature. So therefore, the discovery for all these different jobs, and we run these online job fairs that allow employers to come in and showcase the work that they are doing and to hire talent who might be interested in that. So that's one part of the discovery mechanism. On the skills acquisition, I think this is actually a bigger challenge, which is the kind of skills that we're talking about that make you successful in these roles. Some of them have a green component to them, but a lot of them have actually the traditional component of being successful in a role attached to them as well. And there you need local partnerships with skilling providers who are able to understand the local context. And that's the kind of thing that we would love to experiment in a regional geography, like the one that you're working in. And finally, the last part about jobs and mentorship. So we do run the world's largest climate, or one of the world's largest climate job boards with about 50,000 jobs. But they are only as useful as an entry point. What you really need is a mentor network. So we have a few hundred mentors who are working in each of these different sectors that individuals have access to. They can set up a time with them and chat with them to understand what does it feel like a day in the life of a certain role. And that's the kind of thing that, now imagine all of that contextualized in the case of a specific industry, in the case of a specific region, and you have what is, I think, TIC's one of the core missions, right, which is to have locally rooted wealth. This is wealth of both talent and financial wealth that starts to now circulate within the same economy. And that's the thing that we feel very excited about working on. And if I hope I answered that to a certain extent, Molly. And then maybe I'll take the cue that you gave, which is I'm now going to play popcorn with Ishwar, and I have a question for him, especially listening in as when he was starting out describing the work that he does. So Ishwar, of course, as first of all, thank you so much for getting someone like us onto this panel. There is a lot of work and a lot of mission alignment in what JFF is trying to do and what we are trying to get done. I think I love the fact that you have put together, as Elliot mentioned, things like the insights coming in from the CREST Green Jobs Report, the Morning Consult Survey, and just this whole notion that there's a potential for all jobs to become green jobs. So now I know your team reached out to us to join the GQ Circle, which I'm very excited about. But for the sake of everyone else who's listening in, could you share a bit about what GQ is, how you see it adding value to the array of climate solutions out there?
First off, Anshul, thank you for that question. It's a good tee up for me. And the second is I do kind of tease my colleagues who have taken some of the courses at Terra.do, saying as soon as they're done with and graduating from the courses, I see an aura around them in the camp when I meet them on our WebExes. So, but the great courses out there for folks who are listening. So, and since you asked, Anshuman, so let me talk about the Green Quotient, or the GQ for short. All right, it is it's an exciting initiative from our side that we are currently ideating and socializing. And the GQ itself is essentially a vision for quantifying the climate impact of job creation, both locally and globally, while ensuring a just transition for workers and communities. So we're taking a kind of a holistic approach that considers not just environmental sustainability, but also social justice. So with GQ, we aim to create both a protocol as well as a technology-driven product that addresses the challenges and opportunities related to climate implications of job creation. So our goal here is to encourage companies and job creators to adopt the GQ. That is hopefully will lead to enhanced climate sustainability practices and also promote equitable access to genuine green jobs. And ultimately, we hope and we believe the GQ has the potential to have a significant impact environmentally, economically, and socially. So I kind of want to kind of boil down GQ into what we call what kind of answers, what kind of questions can GQ answer, right? So we say, okay, how do we measure the climate impact of a job? Can job seekers easily access a job's climate impact information? Is there equitable access to genuine green jobs for all learners and workers? How can job creators improve the climate impact of jobs that they create and post? And finally, and importantly, how can employers use this information for climate disclosure and contribute to the race to net zero goals that they are putting out there? So these are some of the questions that we are exploring with GQ, and we are excited about the potential impact it can have on shaping a more sustainable, equitable future. And I also wanted to quickly talk about the GQ Circle, which is the GQ Circle of Co-Creators, which is a group of mission-aligned and climate action-committed organizations that come together to co-ideate, co-create, and co-pilot these ideas and solutions to address the opportunity of measuring climate impact and maximizing climate action. So I'm looking at a few of the members right here. And by joining this GQ Circle, these organizations will hopefully have the opportunity to influence the direction of the GQ in terms of piloting, adoption, and promotion. So that's a short about what GQ is and GQ Circle is. I know we have about a little less than 5 minutes left, and I kind of want to kind of pivot to kind of a rapid Q&A round. So I'll ask short and sweet questions, and hopefully panelists can give me brief, short, sweet answers. Yeah. And I want to start with you, Molly. You talked about, and I hear you talk about the challenges of with younger talent recruitment and retention, and the unique challenges legacy industries face. So could you tell us all why you decided to join the GQ Circle?
Sure. So, I live in the community I grew up in and work in. And I think as like a consummate practitioner, like we're always asking this question, like, how do we know if what we're doing matters? Like, how do we know that we're relieving suffering? We're creating jobs that are leading people toward transformation. And ultimately our job is to get out of this cycle of like persistent poverty in some of our communities and really like create sustainable transition and transformation forward. And so we're always looking at like, how do we know that we're doing that? We need to be sure that the metrics are telling us that we're doing that. And so that's, I want to know that what I'm doing is a big, bold decision that's helping, create a better life for people and a better opportunity for the planet. And I feel like joining this group certainly helps me as having a marker to tell me that I'm hopefully doing that.
Awesome. We really love having you on the GQ Circle. And Anshuman, your turn next. So this is going to be pretty direct on the metric that you already have, which is you have a target of 100 million people working in climate. So how do you suppose that participation in the GQ Circle will help you achieve those goals?
Yeah, so I think, as you said yourself, which is that all jobs have the potential to become green jobs. However, we'll need to build a path to that. So job creators have to be able to measure the green quotient of a job. Job seekers have to be able to see tangible outcomes from their effort to acquire these skills. But all of this requires a total ecosystem building approach. This is not something that a single organization, even a single set of organizations in a single space can do by themselves. Look at this call itself, right? The four of us who are attacking essentially the same problem from 4 different vantage points. And there are already things that Elliot and I potentially could be working on, or Molly and I could be working on. And that's the nature of what the GQ Circle is all about, which is get both partners and collaborators, but also, to Molly's point, somebody who's kind of holding you accountable as a peer to the mission, the grand missions that we've all set ourselves out to. So to me, it feels like almost like this founders circle, a place where we're all being honest and we're all trying to pull each other up into the missions that we're all trying to deliver on.
That's great. And, there is a reason why I picked this panel here, right? So, I mean, there's great synergy right there. So thank you for double clicking on that, Anshuman. Elliot, I'm handing it over to you for bringing us home here. So I think earlier, some few months ago, or I think it was last year, that the World Bank updated its mission statement to explicitly include climate action. So emphasizing a world free of poverty on a livable planet. And you've chosen to engage with initiatives like the GQ Circle, advocating for solutions in line with this vision. So can you shed some light on why you made this decision? And also, if the time permitting, and if you want to, you can also, for the audience here, kind of connect the dots between global greenhouse gas emission standards and the goals of job creation, and why employers should be paying attention to this connection.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Ishwar, and thanks everyone for the conversation. I've learned a ton just in this half hour. Lots of ideas percolating in my head, but I'm reminded of a workshop we did about 6-7 years ago at, I think it was a World Resources Forum in Geneva. We were hosting this workshop, and I think it was a former World Bank guy in the back of the room. Right after we did the introduction, we laid out, I think it was a metrics workshop. We were going deep on resource consumption or planetary boundaries or something along those lines, these big, macro metrics. Guy in the back raised his hand and said, "Hey, I've been working on this for 30 years. You're not going to get the perfect number. You might as well just stop and instead focus on alleviating poverty. That's the single biggest thing you can do to create a livable planet and address climate change." And it stuck with me, number one, because it was really jarring. We had this whole agenda and this guy immediately interrupts it. But he wasn't wrong. I mean, there's this economic environmental link that we haven't quite solved. And thinking about how the world's going to change in the coming years, how it's already changing, creating the economic opportunities to solve some of those challenges. That's what the GQ Circle represented to me. And we've been working for years at WRI with the private sector, on their greenhouse gas emissions inventories, on some of these environmental topics and issues. We've sort of looked at business as, a source of pollution, right? They emit greenhouse gas emissions, but they also are a source of solutions. They create products and services that are going to help solve that. But we haven't really looked at them as employers and economic engines and how to create that livelihood for those that are coming out of poverty, those that are reaching middle income. How do you do that sustainably? So the GQ Circle, I think, helps address that big missing piece. And we're excited to be partners to it, excited to be partnering with everyone on the call, and excited for what comes next. Thanks again for hosting this. Great conversation.
Thank you, Elliot. I've been actually kind of scribbling some notes as we folks were talking, and I realized one thing is that my handwriting is really bad, and it's not, the iPad is not helping and it do it. And I'm reading through my notes here, and I'm like, what did I write here? So, anyways, and I want to thank you all for being here. Really appreciate it for this great conversation. And I'm looking at my notes, and I circled 3 things that I see here. One is, of course, Elliot, you mentioned our TOC is backwards. So, and we got to kind of look at that piece of it. And Molly, you mentioned mutuality a few times, and it's probably a hashtag that we should put out there. And Elliot, you kind of worked around the ecosystem-centric approach to the whole thing, and not by bites here, bites there, but look at it holistically and move in that direction. Great points right there. And I kind of am also, from all this conversation, I'm reminded of the conversation we had in the first webinar, where we had Sarah Mustafa and Joe Kane from the Families and Workers Fund and the Brookings Institute there, and they also talked about climate policies that are gaining momentum in various states and regions. So it's been really a great panel right here, and I want to express my gratitude once again, Molly Hemstreet, Anshuman Bapna, Elliot Metzger, for your valuable contributions and your time today. And to our audience here, I encourage you to stay tuned for the final webinar in the series, which will be coming soon, where we will discuss how employers can play a pivotal role in scaling these solutions. Thank you all for your engagement and participation. Let's continue to work together towards a sustainable future. Goodbye for now.